last week. You're just a couple of peninsulas away.
I was going to say, you've changed your backdrop.
Yeah, I'm in Jennifer's kitchen area. Everywhere else in the house, the sun is so bright I can't see my face. You can see it gives a white out.
Well, I'm sorry to have missed you.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. I am in a different location, as Amy said. Hey, I got these new. This is not an advertisement, but have you heard of this thing called thin optics for people that are maybe over 50 or so? These things go right on the end of your nose, and they help you. You can just pull them off. It fits into this little sleeve, goes right in there. I'm not advertising for these people, but it's a pretty cool little device. Pull this out. There's your glasses. Put them on your nose, and you can read.
Bill, how's that better than having readers?
What?
How is that better than having reader glasses?
Well, because you can snap this on the back of your phone.
Oh.
And it goes wherever your phone is. You see? Oh. Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
I have them too, Bill. This is Linda.
Sometimes I have better vision than other times, as many of you know. I'm going, so here we go.
Look, Bill, Linda has the same thing.
Oh, look at that, Linda. Yeah. Good. Yeah. You beat me.
You just pull them out.
Aren't they cool?
Yeah. And you can get them in any color. Yeah. So mine have a little red right there.
Okay, yeah. Good.
Very fashion.
Yeah, they're awesome. All right. Well, we digress with that, but we're getting this is sort of a family affair, as you know. We only have 9 more meetings left. And thank you, Susan Telford, for being our co-host this week. And thank you all for joining with us. It's good to see everyone. And let's get started. We're on 361 to 370.
That's right. Yeah.
Human fascinations and their reaction upon spiritual progress. What do you think about this one, Susan?
So he says that the ordinary man or woman of the world is carried away by one or more of 3 fundamental fascinations. So a fascination with the physical. Those are the people who live just contented with sense pleasures and don't seek anything higher, which seems to be the majority of the world at the moment, doesn't it? Then the second class of people who are enamored of all sorts of imaginary mental pleasures and psychic powers and are lost that way. And I was considering, well, what are those? Who are those people? And I thought that could potentially be the kind of New Age movement, couldn't it? People who are really interested in, near-death experiences or, paranormal activities, all that sort of things. But it could also be people, for example, mathematicians who get a lot of enjoyment out of mental pursuits, that kind of the life of the mind, that sort of thing. And then the last group of people, I like his tone in this one, this last group of people, the incorrigible pandits, profess to be searching for the truth and labour hard to bring even the ultimate within the realm of the intellect. And I thought that they are probably quite familiar to us, and we've probably been those incorrigible pandits ourselves at some points in our journey, where we try to wrap our mind around the infinite. We try to understand intellectually. But obviously, as he says, in this vain effort, they fail miserably, but stubbornly refuse to admit their failure. And I thought that was the really crucial sentence in this part, because I don't think there's anything wrong with the intellectual pursuit, but you have to get to the point where you realise that you're not going to succeed that way. Awakening it's not the mind that awakens. And he says, hoodwink the ignorant man by their superior intellectual powers and shrewd but misapplied logic. So he says the last two people start with the faint idea of getting at the truth. So they're investigating spiritual matters, but they have kind of taken a wrong direction. So it's a kind of salutary warning, I think, to us that, you know, it's not about special powers. It's not about wrapping your mind around it. And so, you know, it's easy to deceive ourselves. And then, you know, if you're in a position of teacher, to deceive others as well. So
it's interesting. I've seen both. The intellectual person that shows up in, I've mostly been to Rupert's meetings, but also Francis's meetings has a lot of really intellectual people. And it seems like about 50% are super get it, super know it, like our awesome friend Jenny Beal, or you have or you get these intellectual that are just so intellectual, like Bernardo Castro. That guy, he swears he's not awake, and I'm telling you, that guy's totally awake. So you have the people who are super intellectual, and they're not. They're just denying the obvious because they're so intellectual. They're stuck on that. I can't be awake. I'm not awake. But so I found these categories to be very interesting. And of course, you know, many people, the people that are ignorant, the ignorant man is the person who's just not interested in these matters. And we all know those people, and that's no problem either. I used to judge them. I don't anymore because I see a bigger picture, and it feels pretty good to not care whether people wake up or get it or not, you know, where I used to really care.
Yeah. Rick saying fascinations, there's certainly nothing wrong with celebrating and enjoying the physical, psychological, and intellectual. Unfortunately, thought can often become somewhat addicted to these fascinations and their false promises, thereby hijacking one's ability to abide in the truth. Thus, it's important to be watchful, aware, and notice. And I think that's the answer to what Susan has said. What about people like Donald Hoffman, who through their scientific search are finding connections with consciousness, not sure it's so black and white. I completely agree. It's not black and white. However, it's where you stay. You know, he's pointing to people who stay only interested in the physical, only interested in the psychological, and only interested in the intellectual. And the ones he calls the incorrigible pandits are the ones that say, yeah, I've got it now. I've got it. I don't need to go any further. I'm right and everyone else is wrong. That's the danger, I think. So, yeah, there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of those things. They're all part of life, aren't they? Amy's saying a good point, Susan. I think it's not either or, but can be both and. Isn't that just the case with everything, Amy? That's what I'm coming to more and more. It's both and, always both and. I know many near-death experiencers and researchers who see the subject from a non-dual perspective and see these experiences, like the scientific research, as supporting both.
Yep. Yeah. When we filmed Donald Hoffman, he indicated that his insights, a lot of his insights and things that he's passionate about, come as a result of meditation. So yeah. He's a guy that has expanded and gone deeper in his curiosity and interest as a result of knowing this, of having that experience and knowing there's something there.
Yeah. And I think fundamentally it's from which perspective are you coming? You know, all of these are coming from the belief to be a separate entity. If that's where the activity comes from, then it's still ignorance, isn't it?
Right.
It's still not going to the truth.
He says these last two types of people. Did you read this?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I spoke about deceiving themselves, but then the teachers, the ones who are teachers, deceiving, what he calls the ignorant public regarding the ultimate truth.
Yeah. All right. What is time? 362.
So he says, as we know, time consists of three component parts: the past, the present, and the future. But everything happens in the present. What we call the past happened when it was the present. What we think of as the future, we're thinking of it in the present. So when they appear in the present, they are the present and nothing else. So it's always now. Even the thinking of the past and the future happens now. And so he says the past and the future depend upon the present for their very existence, because we can't talk about them unless we're in the present. They don't exist as separately existing anything. And then he says, and I think I'd like clarification of this sentence, but I think this is what he means. It says, thus the past and future depend upon the present for their very existence, and vice versa. So all are existent and time is not. So I think what he means there is time does not exist, not that time is not non-existent. Is that a correct interpretation? Somebody? I just felt that grammatically it sounded like when he said time is not, it would be referring back to non-existent, but that doesn't make sense to me. So,
well, except that because of what you just said, everything is happening in the present. Everything, even memory is still happening in the present. There's no, so time is not. That was insightful for me. I'm going, oh my God, I never thought of that. That time is not. Everything is present. Everything is the present moment.
Yeah.
I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
I am, or...
Well, I couldn't find the definition of this word, Anubhava Matra. The Matratma. I googled it and it didn't even come up on Google. It wasn't in the glossary. I don't know whether it just means I am. I found that the anu means along with, and bu, which is what bhava comes from, means the process of becoming. So what I kind of took it to mean was a direct perception of your true nature. But again, I'm not entirely sure of that interpretation. Don't know if Dan's here or if Jenny could say what that means. But anyway, I am is the source and end of all experiences, devoid of the experiencer and the experienced. So that's when I am is realized, the experiencer, the experience, and the experienced all collapsed into one thing, into the I am. There's not three separate things, there's just one. Right. But I wasn't sure about that exact translation of Anubhava Matratma, if that's how you say it.
I didn't even look for it. I saw I am and just said, okay, I am.
That means I am. I just wondered if there was a nuance in the Sanskrit. It's there. I thought maybe for a reason, but yeah.
All exercises involving contemplation or meditation in any manner secure only relative purity of the heart. If you use right discrimination, I thought that was I've seen this, we've seen this before, using right discrimination and reason and examine all your experiences disinterestedly. I would say unattached. You get to your center, which is the inmost core of your being. That is like that's the diamond of this whole discourse right there. That's the practice. That's what he says at the end when he says, if you continue, or in the next, skip a paragraph, he says, if you continue this practice, what he just described, for some time, you will find the first two material aspects slowly drop away as unreal, and you stand established in your real nature, the truth. I thought that was like the golden thread of the whole discourse.
What I took from that one was the exercises involving contemplation or meditation, or the use of right discrimination and reason, and the examining of all the experiences. There's still the sense of a doer there, a separate entity doing something. And that he's saying to set matters right, you're only asked to give equal emphasis to all three aspects of your activities: perceiving, thinking, and knowing, and then to come to realize that it's only knowing that is the activity of consciousness, that the perceiving and the thinking appear to be done by a separate self, but it's the knowing that concerns your own self. And then as you see that and he goes on to kind of explain this more, I think in 366, that the material aspects drop away, the perceiving and the thinking, and you're just left with the knowing, consciousness knowing itself. That's what I took to mean, because what else can be known? Everything else is coming and going, and the only thing that can be known is that which does not come and go, that which stays unchanged.
And
the background of everything.
Right. It's like attention doesn't go to the experience, to the movement. Attention stays in the knowing. The movement still happens, but it's not hijacked. It's not qualified by the thinking mind, the perceiving mind. It's just, and this is what happens. It's sort of like, this is what living in the flow or living intuitively, this seems to be what that is implying.
Yeah. Let me just read a couple of the comments. I like to pick these up. Rick said, what is time? Although seemingly practical and useful, it's simply a construct or product of thought. During direct experience, time is simply not experienced. In fact, during direct experience, that's a bit of a misnomer, isn't it? Direct experience, there's no experience or experiencer within the changeless background or source consciousness. Direct experience is always prior to thought and time. Absolutely any experience is capable of bringing you home to your real center. Contemplation and higher reasoning is very useful to notice the real essence and unattached nature of all experience. However, eventually, even thinking and perceiving will eventually subside like waves, and you're left with what's real, the knowing of your true nature, truth. Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say, that eventually all that's left is the knowing. The thinking and the perceiving come and go too. Thank you, Rick.
Well, I just love the pointing. It's almost like he's giving clues for either where we've been, where we are, or what's happening in the expansion of awakening, in the deepening of awakening. You could even say that, oh, okay, sometimes I haven't had that stage or that experience, and other times, oh yeah, that's the experience that's occurring right now. And I think each of us could probably say that.
Yeah. Andrew said, when Jesus said, before Abraham was, I am, all thinking stopped. Yeah.
There it is, man. Yep.
Yeah.
I was listening to, I love bringing some of the, those beautiful statements that Jesus said, bringing them into application into this kind of a teaching.
Yeah.
I was listening to or watching Angelo in one of his segments last night, Angelo DeLullo, and he was talking about, you know, about awakening and about a light, about enlightenment coming. And he said, you know, there was that phrase that that Jesus used in the New Testament where the end times comes like a thief in the night. Mm-hmm. He was talking about awakening. It comes like a thief in the night. It steals your old identity. It takes away your old identity like a thief in the night. And you have this new experience, total brand new. It's the re-understanding and I think the correct understanding of what he was pointing to, obviously. Yeah. So thank you for that. Thank you for that, Andrew. Appreciate it.
Lynn's asking, can you speak to the last paragraph? And I don't know that I can because I didn't really understand it. It says, therefore, don't fail to see that every activity is recorded in knowledge, your true nature, before another activity commences. What did you get from that, Bill? I didn't really know what that meant. That every activity is recorded in knowledge, your true nature.
Well, it's just that everything is recorded in awareness. Everything is recorded and known as awareness. That could be the only implication of that statement. Yeah. We couldn't know an experience if it wasn't recorded as awareness of the experience.
For me, it was the words "don't fail to see." Like it's almost like a directive, you know, don't fail to see before you move on to something else or before another activity commences. I thought what came up for me was, what's he asking me to do there? Like, how do you do that? You know, don't fail to see. I don't know.
Yeah,
Jenny here. Jenny, where are you?
She's here hiding.
365 helps illuminate, she says. So we'll get to that. We'll carry on, Bill, and we'll see if 365 illuminates. Or do you want to say something, Jenny? I'm going to spotlight you.
I don't know what it means either.
Oh, good.
Oh, good. Oh, that's good. That's good to know.
Oh, sorry, Jenny Sheehan. It was Jenny Sheehan that said 365 helps illuminate. Okay, Jenny, I'll unspotlight you now. Right, will we move on, Bill?
Jenny. Both Jennies. All right. But what Jenny Sheehan said something else though. She said
she said 365 helps illuminate.
Yeah. So we'll probably read this
until we get there.
Good. It's already there in and as knowledge. That's what Carol Robbins says. All right, carry on. Let's look at 364 and then we'll hit 365.
Okay, so it's how does the mind react?
Yeah.
The ordinary man is a slave of the mind and follows implicitly its dictates as long as he is enamored of sensual pleasures, which is, as we said earlier, the majority of humanity. But when you begin, now this part, I thought, this was not my experience. When you begin to turn away from the mind and start looking inward, the mind becomes bewildered and is ready to follow your footsteps faithfully like a slave. No, my mind racked up and started screaming at me and telling me this was terrible idea. You know, you're becoming a complete loony. Turn back. Unsafe. So that, and I'd love to hear if it was anybody's experience that your mind just went, okay, we're going to awaken now. I'll follow you faithfully.
Well, I guess it matters where you are and the maturity level, because that does get easier and easier to recognize, oh, that's the mind, and to not join it, not not attach yourself to it. And that's what he said the earlier in that last discourse. To the practice is right discrimination and reason. I think that is a more established understanding who he's talking about.
But he says when you begin to turn away from the mind, which indicates that it's right at the beginning. It's right at the beginning of the process.
Well, yeah, but when does that occur? It didn't happen when I first picked up I guess it might have started happening when I first began having understanding in what true non-duality is.
Yeah.
Susan Wright has her hand up. Hi, Susan.
Hi, I just wanted to comment on that. Hi, Susan. Hi, everyone. I underline that because in all truth, I thought it was a process. So there's other times in my life where bewilderment, which is a great word, but bewilderment, right, can lead to fear, or maybe the other way around. And so when that starts to happen, right, like you're saying, Susan, then the mind and the ego kicks in and says, oh, no, wait, stop. This is like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Stop. I'm scared. Don't do that. Don't go that way. So to me, the fear and the bewilderment is kind of tied together. And that's how when I read this, that's how I experienced it. Yeah.
Thanks.
But where are you now, though? I mean, right now.
I'm in Portugal.
Portugal.
With consciousness.
Oh, cool.
That's where I live. Although, just as a quick aside, I used to live in Maine, Camden Rockport, by the way, just for you guys to know.
Oh, really?
So yeah, I know. I might surprise you someday and come visit. Anyway, where am I now? I'm past bewilderment and fear. Fear still arises at times, but it's like I can catch it. It's like, yep, there it is. You can just see it in the shadows almost. And I'm like, yeah, no, I see it. I know who you are. I know you. So it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
I read that paragraph that the mind follows your footsteps faithfully like a slave. I was thinking, okay, there are glimpses of that, and maybe that's just a deepening next experience.
Hopefully, it all begins to merge. Yeah, so that there's not all this separateness going on. Your mind, you become in tune, right? You become a unified consciousness.
Yes.
But, it takes time. Life takes time for me.
Yeah, it takes time for all of us. It took time for Eckhart Tolle and for all the masters. In my mind, it took time for Ramana. That guy, he was a mess.
Yeah.
What's Jenny?
That was one of the things my mind shouted at me, that I would, if I pursued this, I would end up like Ramana and insects would eat my thighs, so I'd better stop. Thanks, Susan.
Jenny's busy typing something. She's got something getting
Jenny's
ready.
typing, is she?
Okay. What is all of this, Rick?
Let's see what Rick's had to say. The ordinary man is addicted to the illusionary and virtual reality constructed by thought and the senses. However, once this is clearly seen and noticed, thought is very capable of giving up its addictive outlook, at least momentarily. This is never the result of effort. Yeah, that's a really good point. This is never the result of effort. Rather, it's due to the sincere interest in truth itself. In a sense, this interest is rather illogical in nature. That is, the thought-constructed sense of an individual entity has absolutely nothing to gain from it. And that's one of the reasons I think that it's not you that's doing it. Because the mind is saying all this stuff, and yet the interest is there and the pull is there. It takes on a life of its own. Rick continues, one that is relatively established in truth tends to move upstream within society, while the ordinary man typically moves downstream with the masses. In a sense, the influences of society and the cultural norms are far less hypnotic. To some degree, these learned influences have been transcended. And he said it was Socrates who said the unexamined life is not worth living, and this statement applies here, more from a philosophical sense than a psychological one, because we're not talking about self-help or how to be a better individual me. Yeah, one of the things I realised that a lot of my spiritual path had been self-improvement dressed up in its Sunday best. We are the changeless and unlimited background of awareness, consciousness, void of the source. It's without objective qualities. It has no voice, comment, or preference. Thought typically associates these functions, seeing, hearing, touching, thinking, and perceiving, with our identity. However, all these functions are temporary and simply arise from and fall back into the changeless background, the source. We are this changeless background itself and not these functions. They are not essential. Thank you for that, Rick. I tell my mind, Sandra's saying, I tell my mind I don't have to listen to you anymore. Yeah. I learned, oh honey, from Diedrich Walzak. Oh honey, I say that to myself often. Oh honey, you still think you're a person. Jenny's saying there's nothing wrong with mind. It becomes just a tool of expression, no longer expresses duality. And Susan said, yes, Susan, yes, Jenny, that's what I meant. No more duality. Fab comments. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Great comments.
So I think there's more we can say about this 364, the bill, when he goes on about vital energy, seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, thinking, etc. are all verbal nouns. And then he quotes the bit from the Upanishad that says, seen as living in itself, it gets to be called life. As speaking, speech. As seeing, sight. As hearing, sound. As thinking, mind. These are only names of functions attributed to it. And it kind of goes with that bit that said, you know, the experiencer, the experience, and the experienced just collapses into one thing. So rather than, you know, Susan sees the people, it's just seeing or hearing or speaking. It's like speaking is happening.
Yeah.
There's no subject. There's no, it's just
no one taking credit for it.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
He's speaking of an awakened experience, an embodied awakeness. I love it. Let's look at 365 and see how that might relate to that other discourse.
Okay, so he's saying that activity and inactivity are ordinarily conceived to be opposite terms. But he says there is no direct connection at all between them. Activity and inactivity are related directly only to me, the I principle, which is their common background. It's only through me that activity and inactivity can even indirectly be connected.
It's just movement. It's just movement. There's no negative or positive. It's just movement. It's just happening.
Jenny Sheehan, what did you want to say about the connection to the previous one that we spoke about? Do you want to say something? Yeah? No? I don't want to put you on the spot. Yeah, on the spot.
Yes, no, I just in reading that, and also finding it wasn't immediately clear when I came upon 365. I was, oh, that's speaking of the same thing. And just, I think what Bill just said, it's all just happening. Well, what is happening, whether we label it activity or inactivity, it's all pointing towards that background which tethers it, which is the I.
Yeah. It's
which
just
is a mystery, you know.
What?
Which is a mystery.
But now Atmananda is expressing that it's an obvious movement, but how many times have you heard Jenny Beale say everything is consciousness? So it's just really illuminating that point.
Well, not I, Jenny, the I principle, consciousness itself.
Yeah.
You know, you realize there is no doer.
Right.
There's no doer to be active or inactive.
Correct.
This is to do themselves.
The I principle is the tethering bit. It's happening through the embodied experience, as you just said, Bill, but it's just like the little meditation we did with Jenny last week. You know, it can be like, I'm not moving my head, you know, like it's just happening. So that but all pointing towards what is the background of it all is consciousness, or the I principle. And that's what it is, registered in your real nature before anything else commences.
Yeah.
Going back to 363.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's that unattached, disinterested experience, hands off the wheel, everything's happening as consciousness, as the I principle.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenny.
That's the goal. I know we don't have any goals, but that's the goal.
If I had a goal, that would be it.
Right.
Rick said, activity and inactivity, there is really only one authentic spiritual exercise or endeavour. That is to see clearly that absolutely everything, all activity or inactivity, all stems from the same changeless background that you are. Full stop! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. It's only thought that suggests they are separate or opposites. I love your emphasis, Rick. Thank you. Yeah, it's exactly what Jenny just said.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the teaching of Atmananda and the pointing is, it keeps reinforcing the true nature, what I feel is being drilled down is that we're being offered these different ways of seeing through his explanations, you know, what, 75 years ago? It's like, wow. It's good.
Kendall said, in the vernacular, it's just happening, man.
Yeah. All right. Efficacy of the real I thought.
I loved this one. I absolutely love this one.
Yeah.
He says,
go ahead.
If you take to the deep thought, I am pure consciousness, with the emphasis rightly placed on I and not upon consciousness, it amounts to a regular process of relaxation, and the brain cells do not move in the least. On the contrary, and then he says, you know, things like headaches or, you know, things caused by physical or mental strain begin to disappear. So what's the nuance there of I am pure consciousness with the emphasis rightly placed on I? And I thought, sometimes we can say things like I am pure consciousness, but what we actually what we are meaning or thinking is Susan is pure consciousness. But he's emphasizing they're rightly placed on the I, the true I, not the false I. And he says, it's already been proved that I am knowledge or conscious. It's already been proved that I am knowledge or consciousness. And if you really understand that, then you undergo a thorough change, because you understand that you are not a separate entity, that there is no separate entity. And then I love this bit where he says, let's just take knowing or shining as the only expression of consciousness. So all consciousness does is know or shine. So then if I say I am shining, then what I actually am saying is I am eyeing, because I and consciousness are synonymous. And when you say I know the object, it must mean I am eyeing the object. And I thought actually you could go a step further and say I am eyeing the eye, because there's only one thing. I just loved that it's so clear that there's no division between the I and the consciousness. The I that is the consciousness is not different. It's one thing. I am eyeing. And it reminded me of the Kabbalah. In the Kabbalah, they talk about Godding, not God as a noun, but God as a process, Godding. The same thing, I am eyeing. And Jenny says he's also discouraging us to conceptualize consciousness as an object by placing the emphasis on the subject and merging the object into it. Yeah, and I remember, Jenny, in a podcast maybe we did, or a conversation we had, you said that saying I am consciousness can be a block. Yeah. Do you want to say something about that? Why can that be a block?
Yes, it can be a block, because firstly, you're conceptualizing consciousness as an object. You're saying, I am something. I am this thing, and this thing, consciousness. And you're, in a way, you're limiting consciousness by saying it that way, thinking of it that way. And you're still in duality, because there's still a me, the subject, and there's still consciousness, the object. And it also becomes a kind of belief or a mantra. I'll go back to I am consciousness, and no, that's not right. You go back to I. Just go back to what I am, to my reality.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jenny.
It's so subtle, though. It's so subtle to step over the edge and to objectify consciousness.
Yes.
Yeah. But then when we do that, though, then that's when we get into that whole energy of seeking, that consciousness is some object that we are seeking, and we're going to find it in the future, and and the finding of it is going to change everything, and it becomes this kind of weird path that we can cycle.
It does.
Yeah.
It does, and it can be quite a big problem. And you'll hear people say sometimes, well, when I'm in consciousness, then all these problems don't arise. But when I'm not in consciousness, well, that is ludicrous. We are always consciousness.
Yeah. Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah.
Let me read what Rick has said about this one. The real I thought. Some teachings suggest and define the I thought as being responsible for all distinction, separation, and the false identification with thought, the body and the senses, etc., a bit progressive in nature. However, Atmananda suggests otherwise, saying there is only one real and authentic I thought, and that's the I principle itself. This is very direct and from the vantage point of the I principle itself. The absolute purest thought to evoke our true nature has to be the single word I. That's what Jenny just said, wasn't it? Not I am consciousness, we come back to I. This single word I takes us directly to its referent, our true nature. It's effective because it has absolutely no qualifiers, such as I am awareness or I am consciousness, etc. The fewer the words used to point to our true nature, the absolute better. Why? It helps to prevent thought from attaching an idea to the pointer, thereby making it very direct and experiential. The evocation of this real and authentic I is primordial and is synonymous with relaxing into being. In fact, to suggest a relaxing potentially implies a sort of doing, but it's more a being or a sinking into the I. Through understanding, it becomes very clear that nothing is apart from consciousness, to include thoughts, objects, etc. In fact, everything is an expression of consciousness. The light, the knowing, the shining, etc. are all expressions of consciousness, all completely equivalent to saying, I am eyeing. I love that, I am eyeing. The word I is very useful because it has far less excess luggage than the other words, thereby making it very direct and experiential. Yeah. And I love that pointing to I being its own referent. You know, I is, you know, if you say the word water, water doesn't appear. But when you say I, when you go to the I, then you are with the what it refers to. The referent is here. Yeah, such good. Rupert takes the am out. Yeah, so just I. There's no need to take the, oh, Jenny says there's no need to take the am out. I am is an expression of the unity of being and consciousness. Yeah.
Rick's on a roll today.
We're all in a roll. Oh, let's go to 367, communism. This, I was reading along these at 366. I thought, oh, this is so good. I was contemplating it. And then my eye went to communism. It was quite kind of jarring. I thought, why is he talking about communism?
Yeah, his version is pretty good, though.
Well, yeah. He said, communism is a noble ideal, and if properly understood, sincerely followed, and consistently applied, it leads you to the absolute truth. So that made me think of you know, that aphorism of Karl Marx, which was kind of one of the definitions of communism, wasn't it? From each according to his ability, to each according to his needs. So it's the equality was right at the centre of that, wasn't it? Oneness. The essence of its goal is equality, but it's unfortunately misapplied. Yeah. And he says equality is an attribute of the ultimate. It's established only when you reach the ultimate, transcending body, senses, and mind. But the political communist won't even go beyond the body, thinking that, he says, forgetting the impossibility of making bodies equal or senses equal or minds equal or intellects equal, putting the body first and the intellect last. So he's saying that at loggerheads with their own goal, because as soon as you have a hierarchy of anything, you don't have equality. And then he says the Vedantin alone is the real communist, who clings to his ideal steadfastly and establishes it unquestionably in the ultimate reality, the I principle. So these are just responses to questions, aren't they? So somebody must have asked him about.
Yeah, and that was the beginning. In that time, that's when communism was really the thing. This would have been in the 50s, right?
In the 50s, yeah. These were written in 1952, yeah. This set.
So he was just bringing clarity to something that was politicized, and then it was completely misrepresented, because that kind of communism had the leaders of that kind of political communism, they all had it pretty good. So it wasn't equal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Rick's making the kind of salient point here. It appears great, communism appears great and aligned with the principles of truth, but it won't work because it ignores the real problem, which is ignorance. Which, remember, the definition of ignorance here is not knowing your true nature, believing yourself to be a separate entity. It does not account for human nature. It attempts to address the issue in reverse while never addressing what's fundamental first. That applies to all kind of worldly pursuits, doesn't it? Every attempt for social change.
Yeah, it'll be interesting what happens when the whole of humanity awakens. Be a different world. It probably wouldn't be a communist world. It would just be different. Who knows? So why the ideal? Amy Habel said, why the ideal? The idea must arise from consciousness itself. True. In that last paragraph of 367, the Vedantin alone is the real communist. So that's the Vedantin, the Vedas, the rules of the Vedas, who clings to his ideal steadfastly and establishes it unquestionably in the ultimate reality, the I principles. So it's really just talking about not there's no inequality, there's no equality, everything just is.
Amy, were you referring to the word ideal in the last paragraph or in the first paragraph?
I was just thinking of why the idea arises in consciousness itself. And I understand that the political idea of communism is just a thought form. And it's attempting to create something at this physical level that may be impossible. But the idea itself of everyone of everyone being one and equality comes from a sort of spiritual truth. And so it's something inherent in all of us that pulls us. It's an idea that pulls us because it feels good to hope that people can treat each other equally. It feels good to hope that love can transcend differences. And that good feeling is the truth. The confusion is in trying to apply it to this world, and I think that Atmananda describes this beautifully, why it doesn't work. Really, yeah, really beautifully. So, but the idea arises just as the idea of oneness arises, just as the idea of truth arises, because communism, the idea of communism is in its own sense a form of truth. It's just using a political word, a human word in this world to describe something that's actually spiritual.
Yeah.
Communism can never be a political truth, never. Can only be spiritual.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm stating the obvious here. Thank you for entertaining me.
Thank you. Jenny's saying all ideas come from consciousness, including ideas of war and hostility. Yeah.
Yep. And crummy politicians.
Yeah.
They're all consciousness.
Yeah. And Rick says it sounds very good on paper, but it's an idea based upon a fundamental misunderstanding. It doesn't deal with ignorance. Okay, 368, Bill?
Yep.
Yeah.
Is there diversity in emotions? He says, it is experience that must prove emotion. When you say you were angry some time ago, you direct attention to that period of time in which you suppose you were angry. Examine the experience you had then. Was anger present there then? No, there was no anger because you cannot separate what you call anger from the I principle. So during that period, you were all alone. And that is what your experience points to. Anger becomes evident as a separate entity only when the function of memory begins its mischievous operation. Shri Shankara represents this memory as the veritable Maya. And I thought that the mind gives the meaning to the sensation. It's just a sensation, and the mind gives meaning to it. Anger, it's usually based on either fear or a belief.
Yeah, because if you had never been taught the word anger, then you wouldn't know what it was. That, as you say, they would just be a bodily sensation. And so it's the applying on top. So when you look back in your memory, you think, of course I was angry. I remember being angry, but that isn't actually what was happening. And to refer back to the one before, all that's ever happening is I-ing, but we can call it all sorts of things, but it's overlaid on top.
Yes. And your experience will change when you contemplate these ideas. Especially, I suggest to anyone just to sort of contemplate these ideas of sensations when you wake up in the morning for the first 30 minutes. You will see a changed experience. If you don't, when you just notice your naming of those sensations, and then watch what happens when you see the naming and you don't attach yourself to it. It changes everything.
Even the very identity. You know, I've had that experience of waking up and there being a gap between waking up and remembering the Susan thing. There's been a gap.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rosalind's doing this. Yeah, and Rick speaks of this too, about waking up in the morning. Let me see, what does he say? He says, where is the emotion, anger, sadness, etc. when you first wake up in the morning? Exactly what you're saying, Bill. Doesn't it require a memory or a thought to create it? All emotions and diversity are a form of story. And even, as I say, even your very identity, this feeling of being the Susan character is just a memory. You have to bring it back. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's funny. Lisa wakes up all the time. It's like in the morning, it's like she just drops back into the body. You know what I mean? She verbalizes that. Okay, just drop back in. I don't know where I was, but Lisa just dropped back in.
Yeah.
The stories we weave around our sensations create our suffering. Yes.
Yeah.
That is so true. Memory misrepresents real experience. Here it is, as something that is opposed to truth. Therefore, it is memory that misrepresents permanent peace as transient emotions. Yeah, just letting them come and go without involvement, without attachment. If memory did not interfere, every experience now called emotion would really stand transformed into your real nature. The only experience. It is the wonder of wonders to find that the real nature of even this memory is consciousness or peace. Looking from this stand, we find no means to distinguish between emotions, as we call them now. All of them stand reduced to that one reality or Atma, the true nature of them all. Thus, there is no diversity in feelings and thoughts. It is only memory that posits all difference. That's it. Thank you, Atmananda.
Yep. It's all I-ing.
That's right. Okay, let's move to 369.
So training in bhakti or yoga, has it any bearing upon ultimate realization? And he says, even the Ishtadeva, so that's the personal God, in vision is only an object of your senses. You take to your sadhana with a fund of stored up samskaras. The conduct of your Ishtadeva towards you will be in tune with your previous samskaras. And I thought, isn't that, you know how they say in the Bible that God made us in his image, but this is pointing to the fact that we make God in our image. You know, that thought of, you know, a judgmental father, or, you know, the wrath, or the loving father, or whatever. It's, we project onto a godlike figure our own samskaras, our own blocks or whatever.
Yeah.
But you attach greater reality to the Lord in your vision, to the objects of this gross world. So it's kind of like, it's the same thing, isn't it? But the idea of a personal God is held as kind of slightly higher than the perception of gross objects in the world. The more you emphasize the Lord, you are indirectly and unknowingly emphasizing your own personal self as the perceiver. It's like what Jenny just said about I am consciousness, making the subject and the object. You know, there's the worshipper and the personal God, again, subject, object. And this can never help to the attainment of the impersonal. And he says that all the training that, you know, sages who had a dualistic bhakti or yogic training, all training had really been, in one sense, an obstacle in their progress. And I thought, you know, that's such an interesting question for each one of us. Is our practice actually an obstacle to realization?
Yeah.
Has all our seeking, all our practice just been an obstacle, preventing us from seeing what's here now? Because we think it's in the future, not here, something other than what we actually are.
Yeah, it's a starting. I mean, that's why the direct path, the direct path still has to go through a progressive undoing. It just starts at the end, and it uses that as the backdrop of your undoing. And it's easier to let go of the progressive practices. The progressive path is the path that where the mind thinks it's going to actually awaken, and that one has to be let go, because that one That one's the illusion. The one that started us on this path, that was real interested in awakening, that one has to go.
Yeah. Yeah, we were just talking about that in the Evolve book group last night, that the often the impulse to enter a spiritual path is because we want to feel happier or we want to be more peaceful. All of these things are egoic in a sense. It's just that the separate self wants to feel better. That's how we start. But as you say, that one has got to go. You know, you have to realize you come to a point where it was never actually about that.
It's such a paradox. It's because you need that. You need that initiator.
Yeah. Most of us seem to, don't we? We seem to need that to actually start. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jenny's saying practice is an obstacle if you're doing it to improve yourself or your life. Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly the point, isn't it? There's nothing that needs to be improved because what we are is consciousness, which is perfection.
Right. So it's time to drop all the practices. Nothing to do though.
Yeah.
Don't touch it.
It really bears, just pausing at that. Really, you're kind of, almost joking. It's time to drop all the practices, but to what extent are our practices an obstacle? It's a really important question for each of us to look at. It seems to just
get... Is there? It's like this book study. This doesn't feel like it's an effort, and yet, I mean, I feel like on Wednesdays I'm supposed to be here at 12 o'clock. Everyone else signs in, and we're all here. This doesn't feel like an efforting. This feels like a gathering, like a joining, and we're all just kind of discussing these ideas. It doesn't feel like it's it doesn't feel like we need it. Yeah, it's community.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason to do anything is because you love it. We love to come here and
does feel good.
Each other.
It feels good to hear these ideas expressed. And also when the truth comes in, it goes bing, bing. It's almost like an internal resonance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kanti says, does this mean that those of us that seem to feel guides helping us on inner, are we becoming helpless in a way? Oh, I'd say not to that, because when you hear, it's like when you hear someone like Rupert or Francis or Jenny or something Susan said or anyone here comes on, or Rick, and it like, oh yeah, okay, that sounds right. It's like a check-in that resonates with the truth of our knowing, and somehow the progressive, the personal self is uninvolved in that recognition. Be open to all ideas without actually believing any of them. Yes, uninvolved, open-mindedness. Be interested and put it to the test, investigate and inquire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave Adams says, I like how Rupert has said that all practices converge to abiding as the I am. Converge to abiding as the I am. Rick
said, be interested and put it to the test. Because what we're hearing over and over is we're not a separate entity, we're consciousness. That's what we are. Consciousness, it's consciousness doing all of this. Now, what would happen if you lived your life in that understanding? If every single thing was lived from that understanding, what would change? That's what it means by be interested and put it to the test.
Yeah. But isn't that what's happening as these ideas find a place that just you just know is true? It sort of relaxes the mind that wants to be separate. It relaxes the mind that thought or thinks it's a separate self.
Yeah.
That
It's like another of those biblical verses, Bill, that just popped into my head there. You know that one that says, as Christ increases, I decrease.
Yes.
Yeah.
There it is. Yeah. See, before that got misappropriated, that was the truth. All right, we have one more in about 4 minutes.
Okay.
Why do questions seem to rise even after visualizing the truth?
Okay, so he's talking about the mind having two kinds of activities, one that points outward and is involved with sense perceptions, and the other going inward, looking for the truth, wanting to find the truth. And he says that all objects belong to the outward going function of the mind, and all questions belong to the realm of the mind. Questions do not belong to him who was listening to and visualizing the truth. Coming down from there to the world of the senses, you see the senses and other objects all around. Immediately, the mind thoughtlessly thinks that they are also party to the experience you had beyond the mind. This is the secret of all questions. And then he quotes another thing that says, only amazement can arise from this embodied seeming world that is itself made up of questioning. Thus, those who are intelligent must look with care to get beyond. And he says it's with consciousness that you visualize the truth. It's not with the thinking mind. And if you use consciousness to examine the world also, the world of the senses will not appear to you as such, but will stand transformed into consciousness. And therefore, the activity of the senses and the mind alone are the source of this world. So that outward focus of the mind. Because what is our experience of the world? What do we know of the world? We only know our sense perceptions, our bodily sensations, our thoughts about it. So that the world cannot be said to have any independent source at all, as it's dependent on I was going to say it's dependent on the mind, but I don't want to say that. I'm interested in the someone else's interpretation of, if you use the same instrument to examine the world also, the world of the senses will not appear to you as such, but will stand transformed into consciousness. Because this plays into these questions that we've been speaking about a lot in Evolve. The question that Ramana was asked, which was, can you have self-realization? Does the world have to disappear in order for you to be self-realized? And this seems to talk about something like that the world of the senses will not appear to you as such. So how do they appear? What does it mean that they're transferred into consciousness? What does that mean to what you're seeing out of your body's eyes?
It just appears as you. It's an understanding that's coupled, that's integrated with the connection of whatever is being seen. You see as not separate from anything that's seen. It would be an embodiment experience in my mind.
Jenny Sheehan saying the poem of number 364, which was Seen as living in itself, it gets to be called life, as speaking speech, as seeing sight, as hearing sound, as thinking mind.
That's it. That's true. You don't use, I mean, you might use labels to say words, but there's an understanding of oneness, of non-separateness.
Rick says, if there is a true abidance and understanding of consciousness, even your well-trained senses and your perceived world will not elude you for long. Just be very open to this possibility. There can be great enjoyment and celebration in the everyday drama and story of our thoughts and senses, knowing full well that they are just appearances or waves. It may be fun for a bit, but eventually it all resides back into the ocean of consciousness. Thus you get to go home to your absolute centre, the changeless background that you are. Brother Lawrence saw everything as the face of God, Dave said. Experience doesn't change at all. Yeah, but you see the reality of everything, which is consciousness. And that was the essence of what was being discussed, Jenny, that experience change? Does what you see actually change? Rather than the knowing that it's not the world, it's consciousness. You see the reality of everything, which is consciousness. Yeah.
We have reached the end of our time, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Susan, and everyone for participating full on. We went 2 minutes past, oh my God. And thank you all for being here. Next week is Amy Habel. Thank you, Amy, for being our co-host next week, right? That's true, right?
Nope. I emailed you. I'm going to be in Tampa having my eyes worked on.
Oh, that's right. We need a substitute for next week. Okay, that's right. I forgot. All right.
Can I just quickly say
before going to substitute for Amy, please, and we'll see you guys next week.
Can I just quickly say before you go, tune into the Awareness podcast on Friday to hear a wonderful conversation between Bill and Rosalind Rourke. Highly recommend it.
Oh, great.
Good.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for that, Susan.